few months ago, I was asked to have a conversation with a individual who was facing time in prison for child pornography. And so I met with the gentleman many times since then. And the conversation was about how he would figure out how to survive in prison. And when you're an individual with child pornography charges, it's very hard to survive. And so there was this ongoing conversation of what this individual would have to do every day while incarcerated in a Massachusetts state prison. Most times that we met, the conversation was about whether he would get the maximum sentence. And fortunately, he got a lesser sentence than he was anticipating. There was a period of 3 years that the case had not gone to trial. So one can imagine having to live 3 years of the unknown and not sure what would happen when the time did come. And the time did come a couple of weeks ago. First week of February 2024. The individual was sentenced to 4 to 5 years, which is substantially less than he had imagined. But that does not take away from the day-to-day struggle for the next 5 years that he will encounter. The conversation that we had most times was a conversation of survival, how we survive in an environment that is hostile to you. Most of the time when individuals who have child sex charges are not put in the general population, most individuals would ask for a protective custody move, which means that you would spend 24 hours a day in a room, in a cell, by yourself. You would not interact with the other inmates in that unit. So it becomes a survival of isolation. And in that survival of isolation, you're going to have a serious mental challenge to figure out how you're going to maintain this process day after day. A lot of the other conversations that we had and talked about was whether he could live among population, being that he came from a small town, small newspaper article, coming from the western part of the state. There was a good chance that people would not know his situation. And when I talked to him about that, it was about the officers who are running the institution could be the ones that would leak out his name, what he was in for, and that would begin the problem that he would begin to face when other people found out. And so I suggested to him, if that became the case, where people were questioning what you were in prison for, I suggested that not to hesitate to ask for protective custody. Because in some cases, that's a matter of life and death. And so as the days got closer to appear in court, the mental state of this individual became clear that there was this thought, this feeling that we had talked about of suicide. And some of my response to that is the feeling of the unknown, thinking you're going to get 10 years, not sure what your sentence is going to be, and taking action to escape the realism of what you're facing. And there is also a multitude of family members that would be left behind to deal with the aftermath of the actions that he had decided to take. And so I began to really communicate with him every day for hours on end in the course of the day, and then see him the next day, and just being able to let him know that it's possible that you can get through this. My experience has been that time in prison is daunting, long, it's hard. Some days are better than others, and some days are a living hell. So now that he has been sentenced to 4 to 5 years, and beginning, to learn the process of surviving in prison, I understand that there are several ways that one can survive. And one of the main survival techniques is to keep to yourself, mind your business, try as much as possible to occupy your time. And that routine becomes a routine that one has to hold on to for years. The other part of the survival technique is to get transferred to a state prison that has treatment and that houses sex offenders, as they are called. And there is a little bit more leeway, protection in places like that. So at this point, he has been gone 2.5 weeks into a 5-year sentence. There's a good chance that he'll do all of that 5 years before he's released. And then there's this other part of it that when he is released, his acceptance to any community is going to be difficult. His ability to get a job, housing, is going to be difficult. Very difficult. But one of the things that the Massachusetts prison system offers is treatment, counseling for those individuals who have those type of charges. It's actually mandatory while you're incarcerated to do that. There is a level of refusion that you can refuse to do that. But there is also the feeling that if one participates in treatment, the time could be shorter. So I'm going to say that this individual will survive this, will come out on the other end of it. And I will see him again. And I will learn the psychological effects that has fallen upon him I will also be supportive in visiting, sending a letter or letters to him in support of him.